Proceed to Leads, Light the Fire 2022. I am one of your hosts, just one of your hosts, Spencer.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
She's the better half of it. We are really, really good friends, Kristen and I. And if there's one thing that we both appreciate personally, it is leadership, and that is exactly what today's event is all about.
Yeah. And learning from each other.
And learning from each other, 100%. And we get to learn from a lot of great people today, different career paths, different walks and stages of life. It's going to be completely amazing. You'll be glad that you got up out of bed. Wait a minute, I was about to say got up out of bed. You ain't out of bed.
You should be out of bed.
But you're not out of bed. Even if you're a leader, if it's Saturday morning at 10, I guarantee you that half of our audience right now is in their bed. You're watching, but you're still in your bed.
Yeah, and we're glad that you're watching from
so
bed.
You're watching from a phone. That's all good. If you took the extra step, you actually got up, made coffee, and you connected it to your big screen TV.
Yes.
Yeah. But for everybody, it doesn't really matter. We're so glad that you're here today. Welcome. And so we're talking about leadership. If there's one thing that we know we need in today's day and time, I love the name. I love the name is Proceed to Lead. And there's one thing that we should proceed to do is lead, especially during these trying times. And one thing that people don't really realize about leadership is that leadership offers plenty of opportunity and plenty of opportunity to...
Don't say it, Spence.
No, you thought I was going to drop...
Don't say the F word.
The F-bomb? You thought I was going to drop that? We are at a church, right?
You can't say it.
No, okay, so then listen. I have to. I'm just going to have to
just say
drop
it.
the F. I'm going to do
say it.
Failure. I mean, what did they think I was going to... What word did they think I was going to say?
I don't know.
Failure. Leading brings plenty of opportunity to fail, and today is all about failing forward.
Yeah.
So anyone that you hear from today is going to share with you probably personal failure stories.
Yeah.
Well, luckily, you and I, we don't have any of those.
None. Yeah.
All right,
actually,
let's be real. Okay.
I know. Yeah. I do have one, and I have many, actually. And I think being a business owner and a leader.
Sheesh, both. Two big opportunities to fail.
It's a lot. And, I own a content management company. And when you are told that your content is not good enough.
Wait, that's your entire product.
That's it. That's it. And when someone tells you that it's not good enough, it does feel like you fail.
It feels like failure.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. What did you? That kind of sounds recent.
Yes.
Or it sounds a little fresh. It's almost
maybe
like
a
you
little
need to
fresh.
hug about that one. We're not gonna totally make this about us today and cry.
We're not.
But
yeah.
Chris, I mean, how did you handle? How did you deal?
I think that any good leader needs to be teachable.
Come on.
Yeah,
is that exactly why everyone is tuning in today?
Yeah.
Yes, because leaders need to be teachable. That's another.
And we fail forward.
I'm going to put that one right in the jacket pocket. I'm going to keep that one for later. Leaders need to be teachable.
Yes.
Well, listen, you will have a great opportunity today to be taught and to be led as you continue in your leadership. Now, this thing wouldn't be possible. Leadership, first of all, is not possible without belief.
Yes.
And an event like this is not possible without people and businesses believing that this is something that should happen. So Proceed to Lead and Light the Fire would not be here without all the sponsors and people who believed in this event. And we have some that we'd like to thank right now.
Yeah, we have a community of great sponsors. Let's give a shout out to Warehouse Cinemas.
First of all, welcome.
Long live.
Back. Welcome. You want to talk? Listen, you want to talk about failing forward.
Yes.
You want to talk about failing. Welcome back, Warehouse Cinemas Leitersburg, right? So we have Warehouse Cinemas.
Yes. Kite and Anchor. One Step Closer Coaching. Captivated.
Stop! Don't you dare. Listen.
I can't shout myself out.
No, you cannot. I'll take it from here because you don't say, "Hi, I sponsored this event." Oh my gosh! Come on. Captivated Culture, which is Chris. We want to thank Lovely Pixels. We want to thank Integrity Imaging Solutions. And we want to thank Keller Williams Premier Realty. As a matter of fact, we're going to hear a premiere video from them right now.
Keller Williams was kind of a cultural experiment. At the end of the day, I wanted to see if I could build an organization that put people first.
The Y4C2Ts was the first time in my life that I'd seen a company actually express their value system and what they believed in on paper.
From the start, we had two clear goals in mind. Keep the agent as the fiduciary and at the center of the transaction, and create an experience that better serves their clients. We shared our vision with the world, and we raised a lot of eyebrows.
World-class technology companies don't rent their vision, they own it. The only company on the planet that cares more about your success, it's only Keller Williams.
Thank you very much, Keller Williams, again, and all of our sponsors for believing in this event. All right, so let's give them the breakdown about what they can expect today, okay? So the first thing we're going to go into is a roundtable discussion. After that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to take you into the Leaders Lounge. Now, this roundtable, have you ever just seen a group of minds having a discussion?
Come
right?
together.
You just see it, and like you're looking, you're like, you know they're movers, they're shakers, they're down or something, and you just want to go in and just catch a glimpse of what they're
Just
saying.
listen.
That's what we're bringing you today at the roundtable discussion. We have a beautiful lineup of everyone participating in this roundtable discussion. Who we have?
Yeah, we're super excited. Chris Jones is at the
Come on
table.
now.
Mary Ellen Waltemeyer, I have learned so much from her.
Yeah.
Mark Botros and Melody Balat, one of my faves.
She's one of my faves too. People, if you did your homework on YouTube, you might see why she's one of my faves. Sorry, I don't mean to put a shameless plug in there. But anyway, this is going to be a great discussion that we know that if you just pay close attention, you're going to pull out some leadership gold. So before we head into that, like I said, we got the roundtable discussion, then we're going into the Leaders Lounge. Before we go there, we want to make sure we take time. We want to hear something from Integrity Imaging Solutions right now.
Yeah, that's good.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, guys, welcome. We are here live for the Light the Fire roundtable discussion. I am pumped about this. Selfishly, I'm excited about the questions we're going to ask today because I want to learn from you guys. We've got the all fun, exciting topic of failure. I've already made it known to you guys that I'm not a fan of failure. It's not my favorite subject, but we're going to put you guys in the hot seat. So, as you know, I'm Melody Balat. I'm your moderator, and I wanted to quickly just introduce who we got around the table. So first off, we've got Mary Ellen Waltemeyer, founder, principal of One Step Closer Coaching. My goodness, that's a mouthful.
It is.
40 years of leadership management, mentoring, and personal development experience. The woman knows her stuff. She holds an MBA and a master's degree in counseling and guidance. Coaching certification from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. So welcome, Mary Ellen Waltemeyer. We're so glad to have you here today.
Excited to be here. Thanks, Melody.
Yeah. Also here we've got beside me Chris Jones. Chris Jones is the lead pastor of Hope Community Church where we are today. Beautiful facility. 20 plus years in ministry. I'm sure you have a lot of good stories to tell.
A few.
Also a business owner, an entrepreneur. You've got a bunch of different projects, some in the technology space, rental properties, childcare centers. So I love the perspective you're going to bring to the conversation, not just from the ministry side, but also the business side. This guy leads in a wide variety of capacities. So
Thanks,
welcome,
it's good to be here.
Chris.
Thanks, Melody.
And then last but not least, Mark Botros, principal at Noblus, which is a Washington, D.C. think tank, research and development for science and technology. So watch out, we got a nerd in the room, a fellow nerd. He's a life and business strategist to the Fortune 500, the Ivy League, the government. And what we were talking about before we started rolling was you're a host of a podcast, the Life Works podcast. So we're all eager to check that out. Well, guys, we're going to dive right into it. We want to make the most of this time. We've talked about all of your accolades, all of your impressive accomplishments, what you guys have done, and don't want to diminish that at all, but we're here to talk about failure. So we're just going to go for it. We're just going to hit you between the eyes. One of the questions that was submitted was, what is your greatest failure, and how are you working through it? What is your greatest failure, and how are you working through it? I'm going to pick on you, Chris, if you don't mind answering that question first.
Start with the pastor.
That's right. That's right.
So, greatest failure in the moment, because I think if you live life long enough, those things don't end up being failures necessarily. So I want to clarify with that. But about 8 years ago, going on 9 years ago, somewhere around there, my wife was had been in public accounting for 15 years, and we were having this discussion about her doing something else. And I've always been a huge proponent of supporting my wife in whatever endeavor she wants to go into. And so she said, man, I think God just wants me to do something with more influence. And so we decided to buy this business. It was already established, and it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. And so as a guy who prides himself on figuring things out and turn this knob, plug this in, turn this bolt, and everything works, for about 5 years, nothing worked. It just didn't work. And it was extremely difficult. I mean, we ended up in counseling, the whole 9 yards, like it was a train wreck. And so through that, I would say in that 5-year season, it did classify as my greatest failure. We couldn't get out of it. We had everything we had tied up in it, and so you just felt the weight of it day after day after day after day. I wouldn't classify that as a failure now. We still own the business, and it's doing very well. So I think, depending on when you ask the question or when you get into the circumstance defining it as failure, I don't quit very easily, and so we ended up working through things, and we actually have people that run it now. My wife does something else, but yeah, that was a big one for us. It was kind of, we jumped into something we didn't understand totally, because we were confident people could pull it off.
And so how did you get through it?
Massive amounts of grit and determination and the grace of God. And which you may get into later, but the determination to not quit.
Okay.
And so this was a circumstance where we had people depending on us, we had employees and families, and we just quit wasn't in the equation for us. And so we just kept at it, got good advice, got good counsel. When we needed it personally, we went and got counsel, and then the grace of God.
Yeah.
Which as a pastor, I can't undervalue that. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's really wise. Getting resources, getting guidance, and not just trying to power through it alone, but pulling in a team of people. That's good.
Yeah, I think the
counsel.
famous quote is the unknown unknowns, the things you don't know. Mm-hmm. Those can lead to failure, and that's fine. But you have to, at some point in time, know the things you don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have those resources all the time with you don't know all that stuff, so it's important to bring people around you to figure that out. So
Yeah.
we started getting on that bandwagon pretty quick. We don't know what we're doing, so we better get somebody else.
I've been there. Mary Ellen, how about you?
So, this is a great one, Melody, because I feel like mine is not business related, but more personal related. I worked for a university system a few years ago, and my choice to listen to one person only when I was applying for promotion and tenure in our system resulted in my biggest failure of not getting promoted to that next level of a faculty member. I've always wanted to be the top level, whatever that is. So I didn't lose my job, which is great, but I failed at getting to that next level of being a faculty member and things like that. Again, because of a choice I made to listen just to one person. So I certainly aspire to your notes to say, it's good to have a whole tribe of individuals that are helping you be successful. So once I got the word that I did not get that next level of promotion, I thought, I could have said, I'm not going to do it. It's not important. And it was very important for me to go back, do it all over again. And what I chose to do it that second time around, right? Because there's always a choice to do it or not to do it. So I made the choice to involve lots of other people who had been there, done that in a similar fashion to what I needed to do. So getting a group of people to support your goals, I think, is what's really pretty important. For me anyway. So the good news was I was successful the second time around, and that's okay. And I learned a lot from that first time. My self-confidence took a nosedive for sure.
Doesn't it always?
I know I'm doing what I need to do. Why isn't this working? But so that's my biggest failure, I guess, in my professional world.
Yeah, and I love how you not only said what was the failure, but then also what you learned from it, how you adjusted, and how the result was different the next time. That's a big piece of this whole conversation about failure. I think we're so afraid to fail. We're taught, success is best. Always succeed. Always succeed. And when actually you learn more from the failures a lot of times.
And keeping that determination, like you meant the grit and things like that, just knowing that, I want to be there, so I just have to kind of pivot and go around a different way or that kind of thing. So making sure that you use your energy the way you need to, I guess, is the other thought.
Yeah. Mark, any stories come to mind?
I have so many, so many. Like it's funny. I almost put it in my bio. Like I'm like the world's expert on failure.
You're in good company. We're all failures around this table.
And I think we all could say that. I think if you're paying attention, we all could say that. We are the world expert on failure. I've had so many that we could characterize as failure. I even had a job where the job was literally failure. The one that comes to mind, the failure that comes to mind, actually happened really, really early in my life, right out of high school. And I was, as you might imagine, I was an achiever growing up. Like I got straight A's or close to it. I was actually working from when I was a very young age, so I was even like a decade ahead of my peers. I was making money before any of my friends were. They were doing paper routes. I was working in graphic design and multimedia. When I was young, in my teenage years, I was literally making a beyond a living wage for my age. So I was way, way beyond. I was an achiever. So I think we've established that. But when I got to college, my dad pulled me aside and said, "Mark, he's an entrepreneur," and he said, "Mark, I can't put you through school," and I'm already in school, and I'm in engineering school, and it's a really rigorous way to go to school, and I had to figure out really quickly, how am I going to do this? So I went to work, and I made a really poor choice in that I decided to take a night job, working till like 3, 4 in the morning, and decided trying to get up for 8 a.m. calculus, right? Because I'm in engineering school. And you can already tell this is not going to work out, right? If you've lived long enough. This is really bad. And as you can imagine, my grades were really poor, actually. So they got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And I eventually failed out of college with a 0.96 GPA. I mean, you have to work hard. You have to work at it to fail that badly. You have to work, really. So anyway, and on top of that, I got hurt on the job. So it was just compounding. And for that to happen so early in my life, at that point where you feel you're most invincible, that was an incredible blow to me. I fell into depression. I was hurt. I spent months in and out of hospitals. My grades, I'd failed out of school, so I was a failure. I was hurt. I was like, you can imagine all the things that an 18-year-old would be thinking under those circumstances. My dad actually was the one who snapped me out of it. He sat me, the same person who sort of sent me into this tailspin. I don't blame him for that. I was the one responsible, but he was the one who snapped me out of it. And he said, Mark, you've got to snap out of this. And he came from the silent generation, right, where they didn't really say much and they didn't really express themselves emotionally. And he said, Mark, you've got to snap out of this. He said, I've had my moments where I was depressed, and I can tell you it's not a great place to be. And he told me about his own experiences. And when he opened up like that, it just startled me so much that I said, I've got to get out of this. I learned later on, and I got myself back in school, I raised my grades, I left that job, and it opened up all kinds of other opportunities. I ended up going and working my way through school over the next 12 years, and it was such a journey, including spending a couple of years performing on a cruise ship, and it was just a wild.
We gotta hear about that.
A wild ride.
Maybe not this conversation, but we gotta hear about that.
But I raised my grades. Ended up in community college. Raised my grades. Ended up 12 years later finishing school at University of Maryland, and then went on to get my master's and got married and put my life back together. But hindsight being 2020, I think the thing that I learned was that I'm not a bad student, and I can't judge myself based on that one failure. Because at the time I did. I'd say I'm a terrible student, I'm not good, I'm hurt, and all that. And but rather I just made poor choices at the time, and so that was a really instructive time for me, and it really set up a lot of the values that I have today and my outlook on life today. So so a pretty intense time of real colossal failures, but working through all of that and looking back on it, it really helped shape who I became today.
Yeah. It's funny, the one consistent thing I'm hearing from all of you guys is voices that spoke into your life. Oh, yeah. When you felt like you were at your lowest point, or when you had a colossal failure, there were just some powerful voices. And so for those that are listening in on this conversation, I would say that's a takeaway to write down. And if you are, watching this live, we want you guys to write in your questions. We would love to feature you here at this conversation. But let's pull another one. This is a good one. When do you decide that failing at something is no longer worth the effort? When is it time to throw in the towel, per se, and stop grinding, stop pushing? How do you make that distinction? And I'll just leave the question on the table, and whoever wants to pick it up, how do you decide that failing at something is no longer worth the effort?
I asked my wife. I'm not good. I'm not good enough.
She's your discernment.
She is my discernment for sure. For me, because she's rational. I'm not. She'll say, Mark, you got to cut bait and run on this. Yeah. Because me, I will stick, to it until it's just a bad idea, right?
So your wife?
My wife is my voice of reason.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I think my family also, but I feel like if you're really very passionate and this is a goal, there's got to be a way to get to it, I said keep it on until you figure it out. You may not go down this way, but you may have to go around this way to get it done. You may need to involve different individuals as resources, as confidence, as guides, and that kind of thing. So unless it's a crisis or a health kind of thing,
Yeah.
you can do almost anything, I feel. So
what I'm hearing is you don't give up on the dream, you just change the approach.
Correct.
There may
That would
be
be
a
my
different
thought.
path, a different road,
Right.
but the destination is still,
if
you
it's something
don't
that you're
let go of
passionate
that.
about, right? If you're something very passionate and that's your goal, there's a way to do it, right?
I love that.
What do you
Yeah.
think, Chris?
In my world, I would phrase it like, is this what a calling on your life? Like everybody's trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, and when you find that, Mark talked about this long 12-year journey of getting through school, and okay, so you get to a place in your life where you're like, oh, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. The Apostle Paul would talk about that even towards the end of his life, he was pressing on to do that thing that God had carved him out to do. All right. So there's that thing in my life, but it manifests itself in a whole bunch of different ways. So I'm a communicator, I'm a leader, I'm all these things. And so I asked myself, is this a high school job that isn't part of my calling? Like, yeah, quit that. Like let's not, in Mark's case, it might be something like that, where it's like, hey, this isn't central to your thing.
Yeah.
And so like you said, your wife can come along and go, quit that, that's silly. But if it's central to your thing, it's central to the calling in your life, what you're supposed to be doing, then those are things we should really wrestle with before we quit. That we should really lean into, and like you were saying, hey, maybe this is something that is just on the peripheral that I should easily be able to quit. But this thing over here that's central to what I'm doing, maybe I need to have another conversation with somebody else. Maybe I shouldn't quit. And I found out over the years that there's all kinds of things. So if this is the vein I'm running in, there'll be all kinds of things kind of over on the sides that I've really got to be good at going, I spent too much energy over here on this, I should just get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's not central to who I am.
Yeah.
So kind of that guidepost going down through life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we're all leaders around this table, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
I don't want to quit. I don't want to give
Don't
up
like to
on things. And
lose.
so sometimes, we don't want to have that title as a quitter, and we just keep on pushing because if I started it, I'm going to finish it, whether it's meant to be or not. It was funny when I was eating. This is a funny story. I was eating a salad one time, and there was a little piece of lettuce on the corner, and somebody was watching me eat, and I would take my fork, and I wouldn't let it go. Like I needed to clean the whole plate. He said, "You're not a quitter, are you?" I said, "I'm not a quitter. Let's finish this whole salad." That's good advice. Okay. So like I said, all leaders are on this table. You guys lead individuals, you lead teams. How do you handle the failures of maybe a coworker or a teammate, somebody that's under your care or under your leadership? What are some tactics or techniques, or how do you approach that when someone else fails around you?
That's a really good question. I think over the years, and I've been working for a long time, and I've led a lot of teams for a long time, and so I've seen that. I have found that, as in my case, I'm much harder on myself than I am on other people, and I think that in a high-performing team, typically, they tend to be similar, and so I find that handling the failure of others, it's important for me to be gracious in those moments with them, especially if they know that they failed. If they know, then my job is to be gracious. If they don't know and or we're belligerent, that's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good distinction.
That's a different story because then either they lack self-awareness or they know better and did it anyway. And in that case, then I must be ruthless, actually. Just a very quick story. We were on a project one time, really kind of big deal, intense environment. This was a $50 million deal, high innovation, and it's super, super intense. We had a new person come in, and he was on his first day on his first day, he was inappropriate with one of the women on the team. And this, okay, if the person was like 21, 22 years old, okay, well, all right, they need correction, right? No, you don't do that, you don't say that. This guy was pushing 60 and had gone through all the harassment courses throughout his career. Day one, I mean like minute one, I went straight up to him and said, "You are no longer welcome on this project.
Wow.
You're gone." He said, "Where am I going to go?" I said, "I don't care. Go." And in that moment, like, so that was a failure. That was
Sure.
an intentional failure. That was a guardrail failure, as Chris would put it, right? And he violated it. And I said, I have no patience or remorse for you. Go.
Yeah.
So, but for someone who's not aware or they even realize that they messed up, no, there's a lot more grace for people like that.
Yeah, I love that distinction.
Yeah, and I feel like, too, it's okay to say to people, can I provide some feedback, right? So if people don't recognize it, then you need to help them recognize it. If they recognize that they've made an error, mistake, or had a failure, to say, so let me help you think about that. So what was the worst thing that happened, right? What will you do the next time? Rather than just say you're done, and I understand that failure. Sometimes, your self-confidence kind of tanks and that kind of thing. And, assure them that, yep, I know you've got the skills, you've got the ability, that's why you're here doing what you're doing. Yeah. And if you can just say, so what did you learn, right? Because with every choice, there is a learning opportunity. So pointing that out to say, you've got it, I know you can do better, and tell me what it's going to look like the next time, perhaps.
And I'm hearing two things in there: affirmation and permission. Permission, can I speak into your life? Can I give you some feedback?
Absolutely.
Do I have permission to say this? And then affirmation of, here's
exactly.
I see this in you. I see what you can become.
Right.
And that's another powerful thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Melody.
We're in the church world. We're leading mostly volunteers, so you have hundreds of volunteers in a church, and so we ask two questions: is it a failure of trying, or like a systemic failure of not fitting?
Okay.
And so if it's a failure of trying, well, then that we can work through the process of, hey, we didn't train you enough, or we didn't give you the right mentality wasn't there. So those are things you can work through. If it's systemic failure over and over and over again, especially in volunteerism, we didn't put you in the right place. You're not in the right job.
We made a mistake.
Yeah, we made the mistake. And even in the business world, look, it's incumbent upon managers and leaders in the business world to get the right, as everybody's heard, the right people in the right bus in the right seat doing the right job.
Yeah.
And so much frustration comes along because, well, this person keeps failing. Well, you keep promoting them in the same job that they keep failing at. And I just listened to a podcast the other day, said we rise to our level of incompetence.
Yeah.
So, we're typically promoted to the point until we can't do the job. Because we were successful here in sales, and now we get promoted to management. Well, we're actually a terrible manager, but we were good at sales.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
So we don't go any higher. Well, the issue is upper management or leadership should be able to look at that and go, we put them in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
They should be back here in sales, and we should incentivize them in sales to just be really, really good at sales. And so the church world's the same way. Except we're not, giving people salaries. It's volunteerism. So people's satisfaction in where they're volunteering has a lot to do with whether they're systemically failing or just failing from not having enough information. So when we look at that, we go, okay, this person keeps failing over and over. Their satisfaction level's going down. And so it's incumbent upon us to find them a position where that stops.
Yeah.
Where they're doing what they're good at, doing what fulfills them. And that's so important for leaders to have an eye to see that. Okay, this person tried and failed. It's just an information situation. This person hasn't succeeded since we put them in that spot.
Yeah.
That still looks totally different, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
So let's pull them out of there and figure out what they're good at.
Yeah. I love that you're kind of shedding light on, we all have a piece in the failure, whether you are, whether you're a supervisor, whether you're being led, kind of owning your part of the
Yeah.
failure and saying, what can I do to help you succeed? What can we do to make this better? Another one of the questions we had was from that perspective of the leadership. So thinking about this may take you guys back to earlier days in your careers, thinking about some leaders that you worked with. How would you deal with a leader who really has it doesn't allow for failure, or doesn't have an appetite for failure, where it's just not an option? Success all the way. Have you guys ever worked with or for somebody like that? And what advice would you give to somebody who's watching who might be in that spot right now, where they just feel that pressure of, I cannot fail?
I have definitely worked for many a boss who did not have any tolerance for failure. They're really hard to work for, honestly. When I give advice to younger people about bad bosses, what I tell them is this. I say, look, you're going to have bad bosses. It's like failure, in that failure is an inevitability. You will fail, right? And in the same way, if you work out in the world, you will encounter a bad boss sooner or later. It is inevitable.
Yeah.
You will. The good news is that there are probably an equal amount of good bosses that are out there too.
Yeah.
Right? So there is that. It's not like they're all bad, right? But you will have your share. What I tell people is you've got to get through that bad boss, right? Don't try to change them. Don't think you're going to be an influencer in their life. It's not going to happen. Don't try, because it's going to be really hard to try to change them unless they're open to it.
Right.
A lot of times what they are is they're untrained. They're untrained for the job. They're the salesperson who actually, I worked for that guy. I worked for that guy. I worked for the salesperson who was excellent in sales and got promoted. And he was a horrible manager. He was horrible. One of the worst bosses ever. But I'll tell you, I was a leader under his supervision. Okay, so I was a leader working in his organization, and he helped me to really sharpen my leadership ability.
Exactly.
So I learned two things. I learned how to become a better leader. I also learned what not to do as a leader.
So take notes.
Take notes. Take notes. Get through it. Take notes. Don't try to change them, but figure out A, why they became the boss, and B, what you can actually learn from them. I learned that this guy was a master at politicking, and that's how he made it based on his relationships and his high performance as a salesperson. But what I learned from him was I learned critical thinking. I learned detail orientation. I learned how to be a better leader as a result. So there are things we can appreciate from those people who don't tolerate failure. They're hard. It's hard. But it's inevitable, but we can get through it, and we can learn a lot.
So head down, take notes, learn from their
That's
failures.
my advice. That's my advice.
Marilyn, you're laughing. Have you been there too?
And know that you always have a choice, right? I mean, you have a choice about whether or not you want to stay in that role.
Always.
Or go someplace where you are appreciated, where people encourage you to try and be risk takers and things like that. So remembering that you always have a choice. And I do feel like you can influence some really tough leaders just by the way you behave, the way you provide leadership. And when they see that, they may, and 9 to 10 times they won't, but they may say, oh, so Mark's really doing a good job here. And so they may be learning from you. So I always feel like you're in that kind of position that you can be the best that you can be and then go from there.
I love that. Clay Scrogan has a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. And I learned a lot from that book, when you're in those situations.
It's hard.
So our oldest daughter played soccer all the way, she was probably 4 when she started, played all the way through high school, and was pretty successful at it. And then she went to a Division I school, didn't play soccer, but played another sport at a Division I college, university. And one of the things we started drilling into her early was you will have great coaches and you'll have bad coaches. But the idea of you being a better soccer player, being a better athlete is more determined on your personal responsibility than your coach. So if you have a coach, and she did have seasons early on where they didn't win a game, and so we taught her early on, like, I'm not the dad that's going to go yell at the coach. I'm not doing that. If you're going to be a better soccer player, that's up to you. So what I would say, in a world that we have put personal responsibility on the back burner, that everything is somebody else's problem, you're going to have people that have unrealistic expectations. You're going to have unrealistic bosses. They exist in every industry, at every time, all the time. If our performance is based solely on the people above us, then that's pretty shallow. So the idea that I become a better person, whatever I'm doing, I become better at it because I determine I want to be better at it, regardless of who's above me. And if that was the case, anybody that had parents that didn't live up to the expectations would automatically be doomed forever. Anybody that had mentors that didn't live up to it would automatically be doomed forever. So the idea of personal responsibility, that there's a season in my life where I've got a really difficult boss. And but I'm going to determine whether I get better or not.
And it's so much more powerful
Yeah.
when it comes from within you. Like if
Yeah,
I'm living to please my boss, or I'm living to please my parents.
There's a short-lived
They are.
things,
They are. But man, when you can dig down and reach into yourself when it's for you, that is incredibly powerful. Great point. Yeah.
So taking good notes, leading when you're not in charge, leading from the bottom up, and then just not playing the blame game, not.
And growth becomes transcendent, not dependent on whatever circumstance you're in. Growth just is what happens in your life, regardless of your circumstance. So.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, continuing this theme, just kind of thinking about young, up-and-coming leaders. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're probably seeing an exodus away from failure. Just wanting to seek safety. I'm speaking for myself. I feel like our generation we've fumbled in a lot of ways. We've fumbled with how we've handled the economy. We've fumbled with how we've handled politics and pandemic and a lot of things. And so I think we have a younger generation looking up to us, and kind of this fear of failure is building in them. What would you guys say is what's a good piece of advice that you would give this up and coming generation about should we have a fear of failure or not? What have we learned?
One of the issues is it's naive to think it's not going to happen. So start there. I think what's happened in our culture is that when I was growing up, there wasn't. You used to talk about people wearing a mask. You're in high school and, they act a certain way in school and then they da-da-da. Well, that was a limited exposure. Now we've created whole worlds that we can put that facade on. We've created whole, cultures where failure isn't even in existence. Like nobody puts, nobody goes on Instagram and like my, 47, that's why we have filters on Instagram, because we can't even let our face fail.
Face fails a lot.
As we're getting older, you know what I mean? So that's created this unrealistic expectation that an Instagram reel or highlight is going to be my life, and it's not real.
Right.
And so embracing that and not being afraid of it, and just going into life with the idea that I am going to try some things that don't work. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to hurt people. And coming to that conclusion. And when I do those things, what is my response going to be? And what the faith world that I work in, the principles allow us to predetermine our response to that. So if I fail, I've predetermined that I'm not a failure. That's not my story. If I hurt somebody, I predetermine how I deal with when I hurt somebody. If somebody hurts me, I've predetermined how I deal with that. And in a world where everything's happening so fast all the time, and it's really good to predetermine how you're going to do some things. And so if you're 25 years old, it'd be really good to sit down with somebody that's 50 or 60 or 70 and go, hey, can you help me come to some conclusions about when this happens? How am I going to deal with it?
Yeah.
And when we don't do that, then it can be a wide-ranging spectrum of responses. But when I get a set of core values in my life, in my life it happens to be faith-based core values. This is when these things happen. When somebody treats me horribly, when I get a bad boss, when I fail somebody, when I hurt somebody, these are going to be my responses. And when they're built in and predetermined, then I can keep moving forward.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Mark, what would you say about like being afraid to take risks? You know, like the next generation has watched us fail in a lot of ways that might make them afraid to take risks. What would you say to that?
I will say this as somebody who takes risks a lot. I would say that you're not living your best life ever unless you take a risk.
Yeah.
I loved what you said, Chris, about having pre-installed responses. I love that. And I think this question, I think, is extraordinarily important today because of the up-and-coming generation that we've helped to create, unfortunately. We don't want you to, like, we failed, we know what that feels like, and that's hard, but we don't want you to feel that. Here's a participation trophy or a participation ribbon.
He went there.
I love my youngest daughter. She did competitive swimming, and they would give her a participation ribbon, and she would literally say, "I hate this thing." You know, because she's like, she sees there's no value in that.
Yeah.
But that said, you're not living your best life unless you take some risk. Absolutely. Failure is absolutely going to happen. And, you know, we need to turn the filters off. You know, we need to be authentic. We need to be ourselves, and we need to go for it. And if we don't take any risk, we are going to allow, what we are in effect doing is we are ceding control to everybody else. We're ceding control to the government. We're ceding control to our parents, our bosses, our friends, God forbid, our peers to determine the outcome of my life. We are placing this responsibility of our life on them, and we need to, you know, as many of us have said, as Chris said very well a moment ago, we need to take responsibility back for that, you know, and take risk. We're not living our best life if we don't. I think, because when we often when we take a risk and we win. Holy cow! What that does for your confidence, you know, like, you know, you're a businessman, and you've had equal share of successes and failures, and you're a businesswoman as well. Those are risks, right? But when you see it working, you as well. You know, you're all entrepreneurs in some form or fashion. When you see that risk come to fruition and it works, it pays off, or you persist and you see the fruit of it, there's nothing that builds you like that. Risk is enormously important. We can manage the downsides by putting some mitigations in place. Business is really good at this, business in general, at looking at risk and putting mitigations in place. But we live in a very risk-averse culture that I think it's actually dangerous for us, as individuals, not to take risk. I'm not saying go jump off a cliff. That's not what I'm talking about. And we need to be measured and calculated about how we take risk, but rather we need to be a little bit more out of the box, a little bit more imaginative about our life.
Yeah. Mark, you mentioned fruit. I heard someone once say where do you find the fruit? It's out on a limb. You got to take risk for it. So
That's right.
Mary Ellen, what do you think?
What I heard Chris say too was being clear about what you value and that kind of thing, and living your authentic self, which I think is really pretty important. I think that's hard for young people because they are so influenced by peers and what they're doing and things like that. And the other thing, just to add, certainly echo what you gentlemen have said, but then also getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So if you have an opportunity, it's like, oh, I could never do that. It's like, well, why can't you do that? Just go ahead and do it, right? So just doing things that you wouldn't ever see yourself doing, I think is really pretty important. That failure is going to happen. And the more uncomfortable you can get with kind of what's coming your way, the greater success you'll have, I believe, as well. So getting uncomfortable sometimes.
I think as far as risk is concerned, there's an important thing to remember. We typically compare ourselves to other people without first leveling the field.
Yeah.
And there are certain personality types that have a head start with risk.
What do you mean by that?
Because they're less averse personality-wise to failure.
Yeah.
It's just like, I didn't even remember it happened. And they don't have to go through the 15 what ifs if this thing doesn't go well. So if I'm comparing myself, who I may not be that person, if I'm comparing myself to you or to you who have that like head start personality-wise, I can be like, well, you just jumped out there and did it, and I don't know, I can't, like, I'm just a failure, I can't figure that out, I don't want to take the risk. Knowing who you are and how you process things is an absolute necessity to then being able to determine how much risk you're willing to take. So if I compare myself to Mark, who just seems like, well, he jumps in the deep end every time, just like, I don't know, I got my suit on, I'm just jumping in.
Yeah.
Well, I could be discouraged by that because inherently that's not who I am to start with. It doesn't mean I can't take risk.
Right.
It means I need to know who I am inherently and then be able to get somebody like you that could come along beside me and help me work through those initial things to get to the risk. Knowing that it's still worth it, but I'm gonna have a different path than he is to get there.
Right.
And that's important because we don't compare apples to apples. We're comparing me with you or me with you, and we didn't even figure out if we have the same risk tolerance up front.
Yeah.
And so I'm either better than everybody or I'm not as good as anybody. And for a young person to start to figure out what that is up front is very important. And if you're young here, it's important to have somebody, again, that's walked through it a few times and saying, hey, I know where you're coming from. I've coached people that start off like you. I understand what's going on. So knowing who you are and establishing that up front is important.
That comparison thing is really, really powerful and relevant in this conversation.
It can be devastating if not done well. Yeah.
I want to add just one little thing. For people who are really risk averse, and again, this generation is highly risk averse, I would encourage them to start small.
Yeah.
Just start small. Do something a little. I heard this one great say. Actually, my daughter, my older daughter, said it to me because she's going through an economics class, and something that she learned was that everything you want is waiting for you outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
When you get beyond that, your life becomes so much more exciting. So flirt a little bit with the uncomfortable.
good point.
Start small. You don't have to go again.
Yeah.
You don't have to go all in or go home, but do a little bit. Where you're getting outside of your comfort zone.
I heard someone once say you got to fire the bullets before you fire the cannonballs.
Absolutely.
Practice your shooting technique, and then you can bring out the big guns. And so that's really good, sound advice. Yeah. Well, guys, we have just a few minutes left, so I want to do a little bit of a rapid fire round. We've talked a lot about the importance of authenticity. No filters. Figuring out kind of what you're called to and. Not worrying about comparison.
Yeah.
If you could maybe just give us a couple, in a couple sentences or so, what are some practical ways that we as leaders and as up and coming leaders can practice authenticity? And if possible, I want you guys to make this as practical as possible, something that they can write down, something that they can actually do to start practicing a more authentic life where, we're not trying to put on this idea of being successes 100%. What does that look like? And I'll let you guys jump in as it comes to you.
I think just know what's important to you. Is family important? Is faith important? Is, what brings you joy? When are you the happiest person that you can be? Would be my thought.
So just paying attention to what brings you joy, and then how does that help you foster authenticity?
Well, I think just knowing when you're at your very best, what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, that and doing more of that will bring you to a point of knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to make other kinds of choices and take more risks and things like that. The other thing I'll say is if you believe you can or you can't, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Right?
That's good.
Yeah.
I think the higher I get in leadership, the more important it is for me to own my mistakes quickly, very quickly.
In real time.
Real time. I think there's a sense once you become a leader, you have to have this kind of armor on that nothing penetrates. You don't let them see you sweat. That whole thing, and everybody around you knows that's not real. They just know it's not real inherently. Yeah. So if as a leader, one of the things you start realizing really quick is that everybody already knows. They already know you messed up. They already know. They knew before you did. They've been in the office talking about it. And so when you find out, just own it quickly. That's the most authentic a leader can be. Hey, you know what? I blew that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. I made a commitment to you that I didn't keep. And then when the team you're leading knows that you're going to be real when you have deficiencies, then it gives you the platform to be able to look at them and say, hey, this is, I need you to step up now. This is the culture that we've built here, that everybody owns it, everybody steps up. Yeah. And so the older I get, the more I find that to be extremely important. I probably wish I would have done it more with my kids when they were growing up, just to be able to say, hey, Dad blew that. But I'm trying to make up for it now.
Yeah. I hear you. Mark, thoughts on authenticity?
I love what you both said about like knowing your values, knowing what's important to you, knowing what brings you joy. That's knowing what brings you joy. Like what's important to you. This this up and coming generation is so concerned about what other people think, and it's magnified through our technology. I think that the thing that I try to remember when I'm challenged with that question, and I am challenged with that question, is always making sure that I'm authentic. Absolutely owning my mistakes and being the first to voice it, right? I blew that. But the thing that I always think about is that other people are thinking more about themselves than they are of you, genuinely. Like, if I walk into a room, everyone there is, what I tell myself is everyone there is more insecure than I am. And that gives me some courage. Yeah. Actually, yeah. A little bit, maybe 1%. But if I know that everyone else is really more focused on themselves than on me, then that gives me a little bit more courage to be myself. Yeah. And I'm the only me. And you're the only you. Yeah. We are. That's what's so amazing about the world. I love what you said about comparison, because we're not really comparing, because I'm the only me and you're the only you, and that's not really even a comparison. And comparison by its very nature is illogical. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense even, because we are the bundle of our own unique experiences and our upbringing and the jobs we've had and the people who've influenced us. We are the only one. And what a privilege, what an amazing privilege that is. Absolutely. To be the only one of me in this world. I don't have to be like them, and I don't need a cat filter to make me look better. They're more concerned about themselves than they are about me, and that gives me a little bit of courage to be more authentic. Yeah.
There's only one you. That's a perfect note to end on. So, Mark, thank you. Mary Ellen, thank you. Chris, thank you. This has been a really insightful conversation. I can't wait to watch the replay. So we want to give another shout out, a big thank you to our sponsors, Keller Williams Premier Realty and Integrity Imaging Solutions. And our audience can watch some videos from them right now.
Great.
Keller Williams was kind of a cultural experiment. At the end of the day, I wanted to see if I could build an organization that put people first.
The Y4C2Ts was the first time in my life that I'd seen a company actually express their value system and what they believed in on paper.
From the start, we had two clear goals in mind. Keep the agent as the fiduciary and at the center of the transaction, and create an experience that better serves their clients. We shared our vision with the world, and we raised a lot of eyebrows.
World-class technology companies don't rent their vision, they own it. The only company on the planet that cares more about your success is only Keller Williams.
I hope that you guys were able to toggle a little bit between the live feed and your notepad to take some notes. I know I did. Let me just kind of recap a couple of things. And listen, if you guys took down notes, make sure that you throw them back out into the leadership world, okay? Because everyone's better when a leader's better. You guys can tweet these, post these things, post the notes that you took down, share them with somebody. But a couple of things that really resonated with me from that roundtable discussion. Mark said that the failures, when he looks back over his life, the failures were actually part of something that shaped him. When Melody and Mary Ellen were hashing through some things, they came to the resolve that you don't necessarily have to give up on your dream, but you may need to know when it's time to change your approach. And then, of course, Chris, and maybe I'm kind of partial to this because he and I serve in the same kind of ministry field, but he said the way that he got through some of his failures were through massive amounts of grit and determination and the grace of God. I love that final line because no matter what your faith stance may be, there's always going to be a component in your failures and your success that you can just not control, that's going to be totally out of your hands, and you got to press through anyway. Now, the one thing that we can't control right now, at least for the time being, is the schedule. And the next thing coming up on our agenda is we have another discussion happening in the Leadership Lounge. So we're going to take it to the Leadership Lounge. And you guys are going to connect with, first of all, Connell. We want to give a big shout out to Connell. Listen, he's not going to say it on his own, so we're going to brag on him. He's the mastermind behind this whole Proceed to Lead, Light the Fire event. So, Connell, big shout out to you. Thank you so much. He's hanging out with Kristen, who's apparently rolled out on me, and I guess in greater company now. And they're hanging out with Catherine Bratton, and they're in the Leadership Lounge. Look, it's Saturday. Even though you're leaders, we can lounge a little bit, right? So let's head down to the Leadership Lounge right now.
Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate you, man. As he said, I'm Cannell Cuffey. You guys have seen me before if you've ever watched Light the Fire in the past. But I'm here with the incomparable Kristen Holt, who did abandon Spencer.
I did.
And Catherine Gratton. I'm so excited to chat with you ladies today. I mean, what a great first segment with that roundtable panel discussion. Now we get the fun part, right?
Yeah.
We're the hip young ones in the group.
In the lounge, lounging.
In the lounge. Melody is young, but we're here.
Yeah.
So what are some of your takeaways from the roundtable discussion?
Yeah, I think that, a huge takeaway is that it's okay to fail, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just telling Catherine earlier, I think that as young leaders and really starting out in business, we take it so catastrophically when we fail or someone tells us that we failed, and we internalize it, right? And then we start building plans outside of that, of what we internalize, to say, I can't do that again. I can't fail again. And one thing that I heard from the roundtable is when Chris said systematically failing, right? And what does that look like? And, some people will choose the same behavior over and over and over again, sometimes self-sabotaging, but other times just because they're not learning from the first time. Right. And I think that however many times that you need to fail, it's either not for you after you fail so many times, right? Coming to that conclusion, hey, this is not for me and I am not for that, and being okay with that, or saying, what do I actually need to learn from this? And it's time to learn from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cool that they talked about the support system being the one to say, hey, you might need to pack this up.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to
My
go.
wife, Kendra, she's always like, hey, that's not working anymore.
Wait. What were you just telling us about football?
Oh,
Please
yeah.
share that, please.
Okay, so I like to beat up my body a little bit. I used to play flag football in the Hagerstown area, and I say more tackle while reaching for the flag. So I would come back home every game like really unable to walk sometimes,
Wow.
crawling.
You left that part out?
Like all that stuff, right? So my wife was like, hey, I don't think you should be playing football anymore. And of course the competitor in me is like,
what do you mean?
yeah, like what?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
But I had to take it to heart, and I'm like, you know what? Our kids are getting older.
Yeah.
My body's gonna break down too much, and I want to be able to enjoy their time.
Sure.
And you know what? The wife said no.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day.
Yeah. So like knowing when to give up and knowing that giving up is not failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I had my time.
Throwing
right?
in the towel, right?
Yeah, and I had my time, and that's the
Yeah.
thing is like, I put in the effort, and she was like, hey, I think it's time to wrap it up. I mean, that even happened with me with real estate.
Yeah.
So at some point, I had so many different pathways
I was
of
going to
trying to
ask
make
you if
money.
you were
Yeah.
still doing that. Okay.
Yeah, no. And we sat down, and she was like, hey, I think you need to cut one of these things out of your life.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, let's work together on this.
Yeah.
And she was like, hey, I think real estate's the thing. And I was like, all right, let me think about it. Came to the conclusion, I was like, she's right.
Yeah.
Because she's looking at it from an outside perspective.
Sure.
I'm looking at it from an emotional standpoint where it's like, I started this, I don't want to
You're
give that up,
connected.
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
connected to this because I put in the time personally. But she's like, hey, I see what this is doing to your emotions, your energy level, what you're bringing to us as a family.
Sure.
Like, I think it's time to let it go.
And to have someone there to tell you that, like, and you just said something, you said like when you're really attached to it or involved in it. So like, how do you let something go when you're emotionally attached to it, but it's not for you? Like, have you done that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had in the past, one of the things whenever I talk with like especially aspiring entrepreneurs, I tell them before you even have the business thought, the first thought is, how do I talk to my loved ones, my friends, my family, and have that
Nailed it,
support
yeah.
system there? Because those are the people who are going to notice when you burn out.
Yeah.
Before you realize that you're slumped over a table at 3 a.m.
Sure.
going, I need to get this done.
Yeah.
They're gonna know that point you hit beforehand.
For sure.
Like in my family, my husband, he will know when I'm reaching my breaking point well before, and he can go, it's okay, we're hitting a redhead level right now. You need to calm it down.
But having people
ring
say
me
time, right? Time and
Yes.
capacity.
Oh my goodness.
So like having people in your life to be like, do you really have the time and capacity for that?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And I love that you said the redheaded moment, right? Because our spouses and our close loved ones, they can recognize those changes, those tweaks. And we were talking about earlier, emotional intelligence, right? And we were kind of relating that to the corporate world. So
it took me 30 something years to know what emotional intelligence was and the importance of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people think that emotional intelligence is restricting your emotions, but it's really knowing how to deal with an emotion as it arrives to you and process it in the moment.
Yes, yeah. And I can say I'm talking to two ladies, so I'll be honest. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I struggle with my daughter's emotions because they're far different from what from mine, right? She's my guts, intelligence level, everything else.
Yeah.
She's me, but she's definitely an emotional child, right?
That's what we are.
Right.
Yeah. It's okay to say it, Canal.
So I've had to learn how to, kind of teach her in those moments and try to keep my emotional intelligence in check at the same time too, right? Because I'm trying to teach her, hey, you may feel this way, but your actions don't need to line up with that, right? Your actions need to be positive, and I'm trying to reinforce that. But at the same time, my stress level could be going up too. So as a father, thank God I have a daughter because she's teaching me how to be a lot stronger in those high emotional moments. And I think that's a big thing, and I'm going to relate this to corporate America, right? Is we need filtration systems for people to be able to take that raw emotion and actually sift through what people are really asking for. Because I think that
it's still important.
It is.
Whether we feel emotion or not, it's still important why we're feeling the emotion or what we're feeling and why it needs to be heard.
That's right.
And there's points where you also just need to embrace the emotion and let it out. So we actually just had this happen the other night. My daughter, she's 15. She's not doing the best in Spanish class right now. Bombed a big test. We get the grade notifications. One of the worst things in the world, that app where it
Why
tells
would
you,
they do that to me?
oh my, I am so thankful that did not exist in my day.
You
And
get
so,
home and your parents are like, so what'd you get on that test? And you're like,
I didn't even get a chance to lie to you.
they took that away from them. But she bombed it. And we're like, what happened? And
failure.
as soon as we hit that, boom, cheers. And just, John is sitting there and he's like, you got to process this. I'm like, just let her go. Let her have the moment. Let her embrace. Let her go back to her room. Next day we're having a talk. I'm like, what was that? What? She's like, I put everything into it. And
oh, wow. So what about when you put everything into it and you still fail?
That's right.
So yeah, she had to, and I was just like, okay, you freaked your dad out. There's a lot of emotion. But, I wanted her to know it was okay to have that moment.
Yeah.
And especially when you're with trusted ones,
Sure.
to say, I want that raw, vulnerable moment, had that breakdown. Because that's another part of it. I don't think we see so much strong stoic types that we don't realize there has to be messy breakdown types and having a balance of those
We
two.
just said vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I took from the roundtable today, to just see leaders who have come before me, right, or who have been in business for a long time. I'm coming up on 2 years.
Congrats.
Thank you, April 20th. And to see leaders that have come before me be so vulnerable, right, it gives me not just inspiration, but almost the right to know that it's okay, right, to be vulnerable in the moment, that failing is not final.
That's right.
No pun intended. No. But it really isn't. Again, we take it so catastrophically. I just remember being so young and when a boss would say to me, like, you did not do well, and I would be in the same emotion of like, what do you mean? Like, I put my 100% into this, it's not good enough. And to have someone say to you, your 100% wasn't good enough, because I don't believe that was your 100%, but we believe it's our 100%. Somewhere in there is the real message, and I think that it's calling us as leaders to a higher place, and it's okay for us to say to each other, step it up. What do I message you all of the time?
Yeah, you say it all the time.
Step it up, Canal,
yeah.
on your social media
That's right.
presence, right? Because I believe in your messaging and your business, and you just need that support system around you to know, like, it's okay, just keep going.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I can say that with 100,
Yeah.
And I can say that, I'm gonna look at the camera and say this. I suck at social media, okay? But I have the intelligence enough to know that I can leverage a relationship, and I'm
Sure.
gonna get into that, right?
Yeah.
With someone who knows far more than me, that can keep me in my place and kick me in my butt when I need it. And I think that
it's
that's
important.
so crucial.
Yes, relationships.
It is.
They're important. And developing those relationships along the way and learning from each other. You know, something I said upstairs is be teachable. It's really a motto I have at Captivated, is to be teachable. And, you know, when someone says your content isn't good enough, again, you immediately go, you know, you just want to say, what do you mean it's not good enough? I have, you know, 20 other people who are telling me that it's the best. I'm getting all these testimonials about how I'm a problem solver and a great strategist, and you take it as a blow. But then when you really sift through those emotions, right, when you process it, you can look at this specific situation and say, okay, what does Kristen need to learn from this? How does Kristen become a better content creator?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if she's good or good enough, but I think, remembering the small things. That's something that I took from Melody, remembering the small things and being okay with doing the small things every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you then. At the core of every leader, I personally believe, is the ability to work through failure, right?
Yes.
What do you think is a good message for any young leader today to understand, like, the places that they're going to fail, understanding how to overcome that, and kind of embracing that failure?
I mean, with young leaders, getting them to understand the teachable moments, the growth through the pain.
That's a challenge I see.
Big. Like, you're not immediately hitting that CEO level of expertise. It's growing through it. It's learning from those below you, those with you, those above you, all mixing in there, taking that message forward. And when you're relaying the painful parts as a leader to others you're working with, it's working on those communication skills.
Yes.
And learning cues on how those, when you interact with others, you're not delivering the message the same way each time. Where you don't process the emotion as much, you know, another might, like my daughter processes. So I have to, you have to cater those messages to different ones. It can't be a unit. And that's, I know from my career and my journey through my different, you know, roles, that's been one I've learned between leaders and managers that I've had. My leaders, they spoke to me. My managers spoke at me.
Yes.
So good. And yeah.
That's a
they got
whole
different
other
results.
subject we could go into.
They got different results from me based upon how that was delivered. So
I love that, because I can actually say the two places that I'll say this. There's really one place that I've failed, and it breaks off into two things in my life as a leader, and that's in relationships, whether it was honoring a relationship or leveraging a relationship. Those are really the two places that I believe that I have failed. You know, doing a task, yes, you're going to fail, but I don't consider that, for me, failure. And what I mean by honoring a relationship is this, like, and I talk about this to college kids. I think there's different levels of relationships. And at one level, I say there needs to be shared suffering, right? So a leader needs to be able to step into the world of their follower or their employee and come alongside them in their suffering to really understand who they are and to really help them work through it. Because you really find out who someone is in that moment. You find out who you are, and you can both grow together. And whenever I was a young leader, I didn't leverage that shared suffering, right? If someone was messing up at work, or if someone didn't do it the right way, I wasn't stepping in with them to say, hey, what's going on at home? What's going on here? Hey, is it just an issue at work? We can work through that together too, but I'm gonna come alongside you and help you do that. But now that I've gotten a little bit older, a little bit wiser, I'm like, oh, suffering's happening, let me run to it. Right?
Don't run from it, right?
Yeah, because the leader needs to run to it. And then the other part about leveraging relationships is understanding how to say, hey, I'm not good at this job, can you help fill in that gap? Or hey, I can't see my blind spots. Can you tell me where I'm wrong? Because I'm the type of person, if you're going to correct me, just tell me straight up. Like, tell me, hey, take the emotion out of it. Say, hey, you suck at this.
Yeah.
This is what you need to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like,
Yeah.
you can tell me anything, and I'll be like, okay,
Yes.
you're right, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to run away from that. But, you know, really being able to tap into that and say, hey, I'm going to leverage this relationship so that not only I get better, but we as a group can get better too. So those are the 2 places I think that me, and I'm always going to keep failing there, right? But
Yeah.
that's where I think
Yeah.
that I'm learning how to really.
Check out this craziness that's about to come out. But
Uh-oh.
you know, something that I go in and teach businesses, whether they're new or they've been in business for, you know, 7 years or 10 years, is that it's not about you. Right? And this is geared towards marketing and branding. However, recently I've learned to apply it to real life. Now it comes back tenfold though. So you come in and you teach that it's not about you, it's about your customers or your clients. Your product or service is the guide, right? You are the guide getting them to the solution. All right? And in that is relationship building, because it goes internal to the organization for you to know it's not about you, it's about the other person inside of your organization, and you guys should be able to learn from each other and to step into each other's roles at any given moment. It doesn't mean that you have to love to do it or like to do it, but you should be able to support each other in that way. Now, through me teaching this, I gained some type of PTSD of not putting my face to my brand, right? Because I'm telling everybody else that it's not about you, it's about your client. But there's a fine level or line there of people being able to identify if it is a strategist telling you that, then when people are looking for that strategist, they should see the face to the name. But I wanted to be hidden for so long because there was a layer of me that felt that it would be what did you say earlier? Superficial
Yeah.
or vain to put my face to the name. But people were hungry for that. So I said, oh, wow. Sometimes when you teach something, it comes back to smack you directly in the face because you're not applying what you're teaching. And I think that, you know, people will look at that as a failure, right? Well, how can you teach these things and not do them yourself? But we're human. We're human. Sometimes we need it to come back and smack us in the face.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, I did the same with my time management.
Yeah.
It was, you know, I used to go everywhere, be at all the events and all over the place and connect and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
My home life, it was like my kids got the weekend carved out for mom time and didn't
I'm
build
right there,
that
Catherine.
relationship.
I'm right
and
there.
so, like,
yeah.
if there was one gift out of the whole pandemic shutdown of being home, time to just refocus energies and stuff. And then when we rolled into 2022, I was, you know what? Priority is
You're not going to give that space
home
up.
life, this
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah.
It goes on the calendar. I tell the kids, I'm like, you put stuff in the calendar, I will work around yours.
Wow.
That's amazing.
You've worked around me for a number of years. Let's
Wow.
work around. And now with my business and all my stuff, it's no, they go first, then
Yeah.
the other end.
Teach me all the ways.
Yes.
my
Senpai.
my Outlook and Google calendars and everything, and we're all on iPhones,
Yeah.
so it's like the family shared calendar, and those biggest lifesaver. I'm making
Yeah.
it possible,
That's super
but
healthy.
Yeah.
Oh my god. See, I could talk to you ladies forever,
I know.
right? I mean, like, I think, you know what? We should probably keep this going.
Maybe
right?
we
like,
should.
Like at some
Do you think we should?
I think we should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's plan that. I think we're gonna make
Schedule
this.
time.
Yeah, we're gonna schedule time to have these kind of chats with people.
Yes.
Because I think it's really healthy. The
Yeah.
Leaders Lounge, I think, is a good idea
It's
for
a
us.
safe
to
space to be vulnerable and to learn from each other. So I wonder who we're going to invite on, Kano.
We'll figure that
All
out, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you to everyone that's watched this. You know, Kristen, Catherine, and I, we really do have a heart for leadership. We have a heart for teaching, and this is what we do every day. We teach people, we lead people, and we want to see you do the same thing. So thank you to everyone that was watching. And now we're gonna go back to Spencer because he has something else
Back
to say.
to you, Spence.
Man, Saturday mornings haven't been that life-changing since Saturday morning cartoons. I hope that some of y'all actually had like your phone sitting up on the counter while you was making an omelet, because that's what you got today. You got an omelet of all kinds of ingredients of transparency and vulnerability and sprinkle with a little bit of wisdom and knowledge, and then all folded over and melted together with the cheese of courageous leadership. That's what I'm talking about. Listen, and it only gets better from here, because immediately after this live stream is over, you can go to proceedtolead.com and you can get bonus material. We have keynote presentations from the leaders that you got to hear from today. We know you're going to want to hear them. We know they're going to be life-changing, and we know that you're going to want to share them. So please do that as soon as this live stream is over. Listen, we want to thank everyone again who made this possible. Thank you so much for Hope Community Church for hosting us here. Thank you for all of our sponsors, including Integrity Imaging and Keller Williams. Thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time out to invest in your leadership. When you get better, your teams get better. Your organizations, your businesses, your ministries, they all get better. Thank you so much for improving your leadership to improve the world around you. Aren't you glad that this is an annual thing? We are too. So we want to make sure that we see you back. Until then, proceedtolead.com. That's a number 2. And I want to make sure I emphasize that, because I'm getting ready to throw up a number 2 and say peace out. We love you. Thank you so much for being a leader. We'll see you next year at Light the Fire.